Hey guys, and welcome to Season 2, Episode 8 of the Tyde podcast. I'm Adrian.
And I'm Steve, and welcome to the Tyde Podcast. Adrian, how you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm dealing with a little bit of allergies right now. Texted you that earlier. It's been pretty brutal today. My eyes are still a little watery, but I'm toughing through it. You know, I snorted some of that nasal spray stuff.
Really?
Probably than I should have, but I've got that running through me. I took some Claritin. I also took some of our wonderful sponsors, Infinite CBD. I took some of their gummies, the asteroid gummies, which are amazing.
How many did you take?
Have you? Just one.
Just one?
I'm not going overboard yet. Yeah. What I've been doing a lot lately is I've been stacking those with the PM pills.
Mm-hmm.
And it's probably the only thing that's been helping me get any sleep this week, because the allergies have been so shitty all this week. You know, it's that time of the year. It's starting to hit.
So, true story. I did receive the rest of the CBD stuff that you sent me, and one of my former coworkers, her dog is actually having some really bad knee issues, and he's had these issues, Sam, for months and months and months, and there's something in his knee, like they did the scan. They see something there, they're not sure what it is, and my coworker started giving him CBD, and he started to be able to he started to walk, he wasn't limping so much anymore, so I actually gave her the sampling that you gave me, because she ran out, and who she was buying from originally was far more expensive than what we can offer through Infinite CBD with our promo code TYDE10, so when I went and visited yesterday, she had given the dog, I think 5 drops, and
nice.
Within like an hour or so, he was walking around just fine. He was a happy dog. So
that's awesome.
We'll see, and plus it also helps with inflammation and whatnot. So if it's swollen, it helps reduce that. So shit works, and apparently we're
and they actually specifically make like products for animals too. I mean, you can give them like obviously the oil and stuff like that,
right?
But they actually have specific products for animals too.
That's awesome.
Really cool.
So, if those of you watching, if you're in any sort of pain or whatnot, don't want to join the growing opioid crisis in America, check out InfiniteCBD.com. Use our promo code TYDE10 to save yourself 10%. I mean, it pays for tax and partial shipping. And get yourself healed. Shit works.
Yeah, it's good stuff, guys. The asteroid gummies, I've been trying the PM pills, which have a little bit of melatonin in them, help you sleep. Like I said, that's what's been putting me to sleep this week.
Nice.
With all the allergies and stuff.
So, that being said, Adrian, we've talked about this before. I wanted to kind of model this show off of Art Bell, the old Coast to Coast, just kind of that old-timey feel, just talking about whatever paranormal and controversy and whatnot. And I used to listen to this big back in '97 with my uncle when I would stay at my granny's over the summer. And this topic is a topic that I actually wanted to talk about with you, because I remember when I heard it live back in '97, over the summer of '97, it was just such a weird thing. Like, it's one thing with Bigfoot, it's another thing with UFOs and like Loch Ness Monster and all that crap, Chupacabra, but not too many people know about Mel's Hole. Adrian, what do you know about Mel's Hole?
Alright, so if it's what I'm thinking, it is it's a hole in the ground on some dude's ranch or some dude's land, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, this is what I'm thinking.
Okay.
And I have heard a little bit about it, but I think you're a little bit more knowledgeable. on it, so I'll let you handle all the heavy lifting on this because I don't want to get any details wrong.
Right, so it's an interesting story. So this story actually broke back in '97 when a gentleman named Mel Waters called up Coast to Coast, and essentially he told Art Bell, "Hey, I have this hole in my property. It's about like 15 feet in diameter, and there's a retaining wall that goes about 15 feet down, and then it kind of turns to rock, and then it's just icky blackness as far as the eye can see." And apparently, for years leading up until this point, various people within the community would just dump their crap into this hole. And finally, Mel kind of realized, hey, we keep throwing stuff in here, but it's not filling up. Like, where's the bottom? So he conducted some tests, and he was started dropping fishing line, because apparently he was a deep sea fisher. And he started dropping fishing line after fishing line, and he tied a 1 pound weight at the end of this thing. And it had no end. It just kept getting deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. He said that he made it 80,000 feet.
Dang.
Into this hole. Now, I know what you're thinking. Hey, well, maybe there's like water or something. Well, he thought of that too. So what he did was he took some lifesavers and he tied them to the end of a rope or something, or these fishing lines, and he tossed it down, not the full 80,000 feet, but I forget the distance, pretty deep down, and he pulled it back up, and they were still there. They no contact with any sort of liquid. Things got a little weirder when apparently he spoke to like a local hunter who had a dog that had passed away, and the hunter decided to just remove the dog's body by dropping it into the hole. Apparently, like a week or so later, that same dog was seen walking around like just perfectly fine by the hunter. Same collar, just the same dog, down to the collar. Dog didn't show any signs of post-mortem anything. The dog just looked perfectly fine, but allegedly the dog ran off and nobody ever saw the dog again. That would be the urban legend. Mel said that any animals or whatnot that came close to the hole while alive would kind of dig their paws in and not want to go anywhere near this thing. There's something just really weird about this hole. So there have been several mentions of a big black icky like beam of light, like just picture like a black beam of light being just shined up from this hole, and the theory is that's all like the negative energy kind of pouring out of the earth. Now, Mel said at one point I think it was a cat. I think he lowered a cat into this hole. And eventually he pulled it back out and the cat was dead. I'm not sure how deep he dropped it, but he dropped the cat in, pulled the cat out, it was dead. But there were no signs of like asphyxiation or burns or anything like that. It was just weird that this cat had just died. There's another claim that he made that one night he found some weird creature kind of crawling out of the hole. This weird... It looked like a baby, kind of like a dog creature, but it had human eyes. It was like... he said it was the weirdest thing. He said it was some sort of a creature, but it had human eyes. And apparently at some point the government came and took his land, and nobody's really seen Mel's hole. like from that point forward. It's kind of faded into urban legend at this point. This would be in the state of Washington, and in Ellensburg, Washington, and there's a Native American who lives in that area who actually is familiar with the hole, and he's actually seen it before, and his father used to take him as a kid, and apparently there's Indian ties to this. But as of right now, nobody knows where Mel's Hole is. It's weird. You have the Native American. Apparently it's located on a certain ridge, but nobody's allowed to access, and nobody's been able to get there ever since.
Anastash Ridge, looks like.
Yeah, nobody's been able to get there ever since.
Interesting.
So it's a really interesting story, and I remember hearing this as a kid, just thinking, wow, it's just a hole. But for some reason, it's just like a fascinating little talking point, how you have stories of beams of light and weird gargoyle monsters and resurrecting dogs. It's a neat little story. And what's weird is that after the military purchased this property, or acquired this property, and you can find these images online. If you were to try to look up the satellite images of the ridge, they're all blacked out, or they're not blacked out. They're whited out, as if they were trying to cover something. So what was it they were trying to cover? Who knows? But the areas that were marked out on the satellite maps were allegedly where Mel's property resided, and where his hole used to be, or still is. There's been like a geologist local to the area that said that he actually grew up in the area, and he's familiar with an abandoned gold mine that is also in the area, but this is to the northwest, and apparently Mel's Hole is to the east, I believe, of Ellensburg. But this geologist says, oh, well, a hole like that, if it was that deep, it would collapse under its own weight. It can't happen. 80,000 feet, that's ridiculous. Apparently the deepest mines that we have are only about a mile or so deep. Actually, a little bit over a mile, 5K, so a little more than a mile. Although the Russians were able to get a big drill and just do like a core dive, and they made it down, I think, about 60,000 feet, I believe. I need to check my math on that. Need to double check the article.
Oh, is that the one where they drilled really deep, and then they put like a microphone down there or something, and they got like some really weird audio?
Yeah, so
it sounded like people screaming or some shit.
So was that the one? So the Russians were able to do a borehole 40,000 feet back in '89. Mel said that he estimates that his hole is over 80,000 feet deep, which is just ridiculous to think about. The Marianas Trench is not as deep as Mel's Hole. It's that's pretty ridiculous if you think about it. So I don't know. I would, growing up as a kid, maybe this is what triggered me into seeking out like weird adventures and paranormal stuff, because I remember when I was older, because in '97 the internet was still a baby, but as I was older, I remember trying to do some research on it, and it's really hard to find information about Mel's Hole. It'll always link you to the Art Bell interviews from '97, and I thought, well, you should just be able to walk up to it, but apparently you can't, because not a lot of people have seen it. Apparently only a few people have, and it's somewhere on this ridge, allegedly, and apparently there's groups of people that go out and they just explore this ridge trying to find Mel's Hole. However, the property is now under U.S. government control, so you'd have to essentially break into U.S. military property, which we may or may not have done at certain points in our career at PALS, in order to find this place. It's just it's a fascinating little story. It's weird because it's just a hole.
Yeah.
It's just a hole. I believe the show Gravity Falls, which my kid was into it, and it's actually a really good show. Actually had like a spoof episode about Mel's Hole, where it's just the bottomless hole, and you jump down it and you reach infinity or something. It was a fun little episode, and that's what, in my recent memory just got me thinking about Mel's Hole again. Because, here's teenage me listening to this, and it was pretty fascinating. I liked it. But as to whether or not it actually exists, nobody knows for sure. Apparently, the town of what is it? Ellensburg has no record of Mel Waters. Zero record of him, and allegedly his wife also used to teach at one of the colleges. There's no record of that either. So this guy could have just been completely full of shit. But or
it could just be scrubbed by the government, since according to his claims, they bought the land and relocated him to Australia.
Yeah. And allegedly, again, there's still Native Americans that say, yes, this is real, we've seen it, and, it's a real thing. So,
it's wild.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. And I'm not sure of anything else like this around the world. This is kind of like a unique little oddity, just a hole.
Yeah.
Just a hole in the ground. I know. What do you think?
I mean, it's definitely a fascinating story. It's reminding me of, and we started recording. Reminds me a little bit of the Skinwalker Ranch stuff, which I was actually thinking about doing on this episode as well. But then the more I thought about it, there's so much at Skinwalker Ranch. I don't think that just dedicating half an episode or like 20-30 minutes to it would do it justice. I think we have to dedicate a full episode, if not more than one episode to it, just because there's just so much shit that happens there. But yeah, the thing crawling out of it, that definitely reminded me of something that I've heard about Skinwalker Ranch before. And then just, the government taking over the place. And I did a quick search as you were talking about it, and there is like some alien activity rumors that's going on there. And so yeah, it's definitely interesting.
Another of two more of the wackier claims that could also showcase why the government would be interested in a place like this. Allegedly, if you hold portable radios close to the hole, it'll play past music. Now, I know what you're thinking, well, all music is past music. Like old-timey music. Like, it's almost tuning into, radio stations from, decades ago. I'm not talking about KRITH 101 here. I'm talking about, actual, and another claim, and this is the weirder one because it kind of gets into, alchemy, is allegedly metal held close to the pole would change into other metals or substances.
Interesting.
That's weird.
Huh.
I would need to do a little bit more research on that because I just have one article open right now, and I don't remember hearing that claim when I listened to the original broadcast. Mel was on several times throughout the years. He had a good 4-year run as just a repeat caller on Coast to Coast.
Do you Do you remember if when he was calling, was he still residing at the property, or did he had he already been relocated?
I believe he was still residing at the property because callers, people would call in and be, "Hey, I volunteer to go down in a cage." There's one guy in particular who sounded a lot like me, like at least current me, said, "Yeah, I will gladly go down there. Just give me a powerful light and build a cage, because whatever's down there, I don't want it to. I want to have some sort of protection. So get like a shark cage or something. Just lower it 80,000 feet into the earth." So some people also recommended putting live animals down there. Again, I believe he put a cat into the down. I apologize. I forget exactly what happened to this cat. But it just died. And he didn't even drop it that far. So maybe it could have been carbon monoxide poisoning. Who knows? Because, I mean, we are dealing with inner Earth stuff. And there are a lot of gases down there.
Oh, absolutely.
But it's weird. He's dropped flashlights. He's dropped like noisy things down there, and he never hears anything hit the bottom. Allegedly, he's dropped really powerful flashlights down there just to see them fade into darkness, just straight down. So, at some point, I would love to find Mel's Hole. That'd be wonderful. I mean, that's all I've got on that. It was just a fun little topic, and I mean, God, I've been droning on about it now for about 20 minutes. It's just one of those weird.
I'm sure by now the government has put cameras down there, so they've probably sent people down there.
Oh,
yeah. This place actually exists. We were probably aware of what it is.
Oh yeah, it's like the end of season 2 of Stranger Things when they lower 11 into the pit. Have you seen that?
Yeah, right. yeah.
Yeah, it's just like that. All the xenomorphs are running around.
Wouldn't doubt it.
So, that's all I've got on Mel's Hole. It's just something I wanted to talk about, kind of get the coast to coast feel. One thing I would like to tell everybody, big channel news, and I'm going to make the announcement tomorrow live. We now have a Patreon account. Yay! So what does this mean? If you decide to become a Patreon member, this will help support Adrian and I in future adventures that we have been talking about. One of the big ones that I would really like to do is an Area 51 trip. The itinerary would be us staying probably at the Luxor or Mandalay, because it's closest to the Janus terminal, which is the airline that takes the employees from the airport to Area 51, Janus Airline. They're the white planes with the red stripe. And get some really cool footage of that, because I haven't seen a lot of footage of people walking up to the actual Janus terminal. Apparently people that do get shooed away really quickly, but I think I found a way to get in close without trespassing or anything and just kind of peek in while, still just minding our own business. And then rent a Jeep and drive up to Tikaboo, which is the mountain that now looks over Area 51. I think it used to be, God, what was that mountain's range? Like Eagle Mountain or Bald Mountain or something. Something like that. It was a lot closer, but the government expanded the boundaries of the base, so people can't get there anymore. So Tikaboo is
the thing that you used to be able to overlook the base on.
Yeah, it was maybe.
Yeah, right.
It was maybe 10 miles closer. But you can't access that anymore because of the government. So Tikaboo is the last point where you can overlook Area 51. The downside is that we would need a 4-wheeler, and it's a gnarly hike. I heard it's probably one of the hardest hikes like ever. But Adrian and I, we can do it. We're strapping guys.
Absolutely.
And just want to get a lot of cool footage.
It would also be really cool to record a podcast while we're up there.
Yeah.
Just in the desert by Area 51.
That would be pretty cool. So that'd be one of the things. Again, would really appreciate any sort of Patreon contribution. That's what we would like to. One of the things we'd like to bring to you. Adrian and I have also talked about doing Stanley Hotel visit. Adrian's been there multiple times, and he has a couple interesting stories. I've never been yet, and I think it'd be cool for us to do like an actual thorough investigation of the place.
Definitely.
And if our popularity continues to rise, we get more subscribers and whatnot, I'd like to maybe once a month just find a haunted hotel somewhere and just stay in whatever haunted room and do a live stream, record, and just see what happens. I think that'd be cool.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, Coronado's not that far from me, so that'd be one of the easiest things. So that's the type of stuff that I would like to kind of provide to the channel. Adrian seems to be on the same page.
And also, like we just mentioned, there's Skinwalker Ranch in Utah, kind of in between both you and me. So that's another thing we could do.
We can meet in the middle.
Head out there and do some camping trip. Yeah, exactly.
Now, there is, I think I mentioned this once to you in passing, but I have a friend who has an uncle who lives in Illinois, and his house is like an old high school, and I was given permission to go out there and do a ghost investigation, because apparently this place is stupidly haunted. And my friend, you know her. I'm not going to mention her on the air, but you know her.
Right. Yeah, no, I know who you're talking about. Yeah, we've definitely talked about this before.
Okay, but we would have full access to a haunted, abandoned high school, and apparently the living quarters are all upstairs. But downstairs, you have like the old gymnasium, the old cafeteria, a few classrooms. She says that she's heard everything from footsteps to disembodied voices. She's seen orbs, just the whole gambit. Maybe.
So was this like a private school?
Yeah. So this is like a small town, just country high school.
Okay.
They probably taught creationism. So, yeah, just a small town school, so it's not very big, but still big enough for still a school. So it's not like a tiny little house either. It's a big building.
Okay.
And actually, we should probably have her on one day, because she has a lot of gnarly stories. And just have like a ghost episode. That'd be great. So things like that is what I would like to do. Adrian, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. That all sounds super cool. Again, I would love to do Skinwalker Ranch. I think that would be a fun one.
That would be very cool.
I don't know how close we can get. I may have to reach out to my buddy on social media, Jeremy Corbell, who if you guys are familiar with the Skinwalker Ranch thing, he's the guy that directed the Hunt for the Skinwalker, which is one of the definitive documentaries on Skinwalker Ranch. He's also very close with how am I spacing on his name right now? George Knapp, who again from Coast to Coast, he's been on that a lot. He also is the guy that interviewed Bob Lazar back in the day, and also Jeremy Corbell did the Bob Lazar documentary. That's making the rounds right now. That's pretty popular. He also has a film on Netflix right now. If you guys are interested in checking that out, called Patient 17, and it's actually about a surgeon who has taken out multiple pieces of metal from people's bodies that claim to have been abducted.
Really?
And all of a sudden have these pieces of metal in their bodies.
Interesting.
So he's a surgeon that has done that multiple times, and that's actually on Netflix. If any of you guys have Netflix, it's called Patient 17.
I'll have to check that out.
But
I've been watching Love, Robot, Death. That's pretty
definitely
good.
An interesting thing. Yeah.
So, anyway, so that in my previous channel, I said I never wanted a Patreon, but I was never really striving towards anything. So now we have a Patreon. I know some of my longtime listeners have actually asked me in the past if and when I'd ever get a Patreon. Now I do. Adrian and I will talk about setting up different tiers and try to come up with little incentives. I do have some outtakes and behind-the-scenes stuff from some of our previous adventures, just the stuff that fell on the editing floor. So that could be one of the things. Also, we would like to get some guests on here. I've always been known to get some really interesting guests back in my old show days, so I'd like to kind of maintain that standard in this new life. So anyways, that's it. So everything will be linked down below. And we're still trying to get to 1,000 subs, so once we get to 1,000 subs, again, that'll unlock a lot more opportunities for us as a channel. That said, Adrian, what did you have for us tonight?
So, we did talk about this a little bit off air. I have a really, really interesting story.
Let's hear it.
Have you heard of the Kentucky Goblins? They've been referred to a number of different ways, but the Kentucky my favorite name for this incident.
So, in some of my old books, I do remember reading about the Kentucky Goblins, but I'm not entirely. I don't remember the details of the Kentucky Goblins.
Right.
But when you sent me that picture, I've seen that picture before. Of the weird looking, bat looking creature.
Yeah, I was talking to some of my coworkers about this the other day. It kind of reminds me of the bat from that old Disney cartoon Anastasia.
Yeah.
Wait, was that actually Disney?
It is
I
now.
don't remember.
It is now that they bought Fox.
Oh, that's funny.
That's my girlfriend's favorite non-Disney movie, and I'm gonna tell her that. You thought it was a Disney movie, and she's going to give you the business. Anyways.
Well, I haven't seen that since I was 8 years old.
Yeah. Actually, she was watching that.
It's been a while.
She was watching that the other day, on her tablet. And she was joking oh, she's a Disney princess now. I was like, oh, great. So.
That's funny.
Yeah.
But yeah. If you guys are interested in seeing what this picture is, just Google Kentucky Goblins illustration, or just Google image search it, and you should be able to find it pretty easily.
They're pretty cute, and they're tiny. They're only 2 or 3 feet tall, right? They're pretty tiny, if I remember.
Yeah, they were 3 feet tall from what I was seeing. So this incident happened in the early 50s. Around this time, the incidents of UFOs were up a little bit here and there, and I was actually reading a lot of case studies on a bunch of UFO sightings at this time, and they were kind of piling up all over the place, and not just in the United States, but there were cases in Sweden, all over Europe, where people were seeing things, like France, Italy.
There was a boom for maybe for 15 years post Roswell. There was a boom in abduction and UFO sightings. And
this is about about when that took place. Top of your head, do you remember what year Roswell was? Was it
47.
47?
47.
47. All right, yep. That's what I thought. Okay. So, Kentucky Goblins. This happened in August of, I believe, 52. In this place called Kelly, Kentucky. It was a really small town. This happened on a farm. Now, on this farm, there was a family, and they had a few friends that were staying with them. So the people that were there was the mom of the family, who was a 50-year-old widower. Her name was Glennie Langford. Her son, Elmer, or Lucky, as they called him, Sutton, who was 25 at the time, and his wife, who was 29. Her name was Vera. So had JC or John Charlie or JC Sutton, who was 21, Langford's son, and his wife, who was 27 at the time. They had their 3 kids, Lonnie, Carlton, and Mary, who were 12, 10, and 7, I believe.
Okay.
And also Billy Ray Taylor, a 21-year-old friend of Lucky's. His wife, June Taylor, who was 18 at the time. O.P. Baker, who was in his early to mid-30s, who was the brother of Arlene Sutton, who was the wife of John Charlie Sutton. And he was the brother-in-law of the family. He lived in Hopkinsville, which is the next town up from Kelly, and it was a little bit of a bigger town. So I think that had about 20,000 people or so, and Kelly was really more of like a couple of hundred people, like in that town. So it was a much smaller town. So Hopkinsville was the much bigger nearby town.
Right.
And O.P. Baker actually lived there, but he would often stay with the Suttons because he worked near there, and he would often get rides to his job there. So there's also 2 other sons from Mrs. Langford, the mother of the family, from her first marriage. So the permanent residents of the farm were Mrs. Langford, the J.C. Suttons, and the 3 children. But all the other people would stay there occasionally. So at the time of this incident, I believe it was 8 adults and 3 children that were on the farm. So what happened? At about 7 p.m., I think it was Lucky that let me look at my notes real quick. No. It was actually Billy Ray Taylor, who was one of the sons. So he had actually seen. I think he went out to like a well on the farm. Again, this farm, there wasn't a whole lot of electricity. They didn't even have like phones or radios. They had like a generator, and they had lights, like light bulbs. That was the extent of the technology that they had at the farm. So they had a well, and Billy Ray Taylor went out to the well to get some water for the farm, and he claims that he saw a flying saucer. So he goes back to the farm, tells everyone about this, and nobody really believes him because he was kind of he wasn't a super like trustworthy dude. And I think I said he was one of the sons. He's actually a friend of Lucky's. So he wasn't related to the family. He was a family friend.
Okay.
So he like exaggerate about things. So nobody like really paid attention to what he was saying about the flying saucer. But
Do you know what kind of saucer it was? Was it a sphere? Was it oval? Was it one of the boomerang?
So what I actually have heard it described as looking like was a bathtub.
Okay.
So I'm imagining like like an oblong like type shape or like a long like oval type thing. Because again, this is the 50s, so I'm thinking like one of those old like longer like bathtub type things.
Okay.
So
kind of like a longer, like a curved rectangle, kind of.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Okay.
So maybe think like those the reports of like the old like cigar shaped like UFOs.
Yeah. That makes sense.
So anyways, eventually, they're back at the farm. They start seeing these things like walking towards them, walking towards the farm. Again, they're about 3 feet tall. They've got oversized heads. They have huge yellow eyes. They got big ears, long arms, big hands, and talons at the end of their hands.
Yeah,
they glowed.
Very weird-looking creatures.
Yeah, not traditionally what you hear in terms of extraterrestrials or anything like that.
No.
They also glowed, and they appeared to be floating. So they start walking up to the farm, and obviously the people seeing this are like, what the fuck is that?
Right.
So they go and they grab their weapons. So at the time on the farm, I believe they had 2 shotguns, a rifle, and a pistol. From my research, I believe they only used the shotguns and the rifle. There are some reports that they actually used the pistol, which was a 22 pistol, but most of the reports that I've read said that they only used the first 3, so the 2 shotguns and the rifle. And I think there was like one newspaper that said that they actually used the pistol too, but everything else I read said they only used the other 3. So they grab their weapons and they start firing at these things. Apparently, the bullets didn't really have any effect on these creatures.
Yeah, I remember.
But nothing really.
Yeah,
happened.
I'm remembering the story now, just a little bit as you're saying it.
So I guess like the creatures would like flip, but there didn't seem to be any like visual damage. Like it didn't look like it was damaging these creatures at all. They were just kind of like flipping or jumping.
Yeah.
As they were getting shot at.
Right.
So these people are freaking out. They're shooting at these things. Everyone else on the farm is now aware of what's happening. Everyone gets eyes on these things, and I think what I actually read was again. So there was 8 adults and 3 children.
Yeah.
On the farm. Everybody except one of the adults actually saw these things. The only one of the adults that didn't see anything, I believe it was the wife of one of the sons. She didn't see anything was because she was too scared to look. She refused to look at these things.
Did they make any sounds, or were they quiet?
That they saw these things.
Did they make any sounds at all?
I don't think I read anything about the sounds that these things were making. Just that they were peering in at them. They kept like walking towards the farm, stuff like that. One of the things that was really creepy and almost like a straight out of a horror movie is, so they're shooting at these things. One of the sons like goes out into the to step outside to get a better shot at these things.
Yeah.
And from above him, like from the roof, you see like the claw or like the talon of one of these things like reach down and like touch the guy's hair, and I guess the mom actually grabs him and pulls him back into the farmhouse.
Really?
And then another one of the brothers like runs out, turns around, and shoots up at this thing, which was on the roof at the time, and then the thing like flips back off of the roof. But it's a wild story. So I guess this originally happened, I believe at 7 p.m. is around when this started, and it goes on for about 3 or 4 hours.
Yeah, it went on throughout the night. I remember hearing about that.
It was a long time. So at about 11 p.m., they finally bolt it out of the farm. They get in 2 vehicles, and they drive to the nearby town to grab the police. They tell the police what happened, and then the police actually head back to the farm to investigate it. Now, this is where things got really interesting for me, because the type of response that this got. So this is who goes back to the farmhouse.
Yeah.
City police, county police, state police, military police.
Wow.
From nearby Fort Campbell, the Hopkinsville newspaper photographer, a bunch of other investigators drove to the farm that night to investigate this thing.
Wow.
Now, that kind of response, like, tells me that they were all taking this very seriously.
Yeah.
Obviously, if it seems like just like some bullshit story that someone's like, telling you as a police officer, you don't send that kind of response.
No.
So obviously they believe that these people really saw something. Now, what they actually told the police that they saw down there is up for speculation. Like, I don't know exactly what they said to them, but it was pretty crazy. It was obviously crazy enough to warrant this kind of response.
Right.
The military police thing is what really got my attention.
And
so, anyways, they all go back to the farmhouse. All they see there is the spent shotgun shells. They don't see any signs of these creatures. They don't see any signs of this flying saucer. So they calm the family down, and they end up leaving.
Right.
About 30 minutes after they leave, these creatures return. And it goes on for another few hours, and then eventually, I think at about 3 or 4 in the morning, these things finally leave. The creatures leave, and the family never sees them again.
So it kind of plays out like an M. Night Shyamalan movie. Was it Signs? Where just
yeah, it's similar.
It kind of reminds me of that a little bit, only without the stupid twist.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So for hours, this family was essentially their home sieged by these adorable little bat creatures that were impervious to our weapons. It is a neat story.
So, in the research for this, I also looked into some of the people that have tried to debunk the incident. Probably one of the best cases against this was this one investigator hypothesized that what they were actually seeing were great horned owls, who are actually indigenous to this region.
Mm-hmm.
And if you Google a great horned owl and you look at it next to the Kentucky Goblin illustration, similar. But I guess his argument was the way that these people described them fit a lot of what the creatures had.
Great horned owls don't walk.
And he presented a lot of really compelling evidence. But where this kind of falls apart for me is owls aren't impervious to bullets.
Right.
and like these apparently, like from testimony of the people on the farm, like they were getting like close up like shots,
right,
of these things, and also, so I know that the people on this farm, they weren't how do I put this nicely? They weren't like this, like they weren't they weren't college educated or anything like that. But still,
well, so
I
here's
have
what
a hard time. I have.
So
Oh,
here's
go ahead.
here's what I say about that. Doesn't matter if you're college educated or whatnot. If you live in an area for so long, like you and I grew up in Mission Viejo, we know the
Yeah,
wildlife in Mission Viejo.
exactly.
I've seen a lot of wildlife. I've seen owls. Coming home late, about a month ago, as I was parking my car, getting out of the car, I heard 3 owls all hooting to each other, and actually saw a barn owl fly from one tree to another, and it was pretty cool because I don't see owls that much, but I've seen the great horned owl also, and they're fucking big.
Yeah,
I know what an owl looks like. The Kentucky Goblin is not an owl.
exactly. So
There's a huge difference.
especially with these owls being so common to that area, I feel like even if these people weren't like the smartest people in the world, they would know what an owl
Yeah,
looks like.
if you grow up in the country, you
Especially if
know
this
what
was
things are when it comes to your
right.
surroundings.
Especially if they were getting like really good looks at these things. Like it wasn't like a situation where this thing was like swooping down and they would see it for a second, then it would be gone. Like they saw this for 3-4 hours at a time, like popping up all around their house.
Right, and not just flying. These things
So
were walking around, weren't they?
yeah, they were walking around. They would float. They were perching on things, which I mean, it does fit some of the characteristics of an owl. But again, I think like if these things were owls at some point during these
This
3-4 hours, the first time, and then another 3-4 hours in the second time.
right,
One of these 8 adults or 3 children would have been like, "Hey, that's just an owl."
right.
And again, if they were shooting at these things and like getting like point blank shots at these things, like there would be feathers, there would be blood.
Right.
I think if these things were owls, like at some point, like one of these people could have definitively said like, "Hey, these things are owls." And with that, if these were owls, like I know tutorial and all that stuff, but if an owl's getting shot at, I think at some point it's going to fly away. It's not going to just keep hanging out there and keep walking around on the ground and keep peering into this farmhouse and like and stuff like that.
So you know what this reminds me of is if you've ever heard of Nome, Alaska, and I'd love to do an episode talking about that, where oh god, that movie was based off the incident that happened in Nome, Alaska, where the person was abducted and never seen again.
Oh, The Fourth Kind?
Yes. Have you seen that movie?
Yes.
So
Yes.
remember,
I love that movie. It's one of my favorites.
dude, that movie's, that whole story is fucking scary. But if you remember,
Yeah, right?
in the beginning when before things go batshit, Milia Yoka Doodle Doo, whatever her name is,
Jovic, yeah.
yeah, Lilu,
Right.
she describes seeing barn owls looking in through her window. And this sounds very similar where I guess because of the big eyes and whatnot, because if you look at the face of an owl and the face of like your common alien, they are pretty similar. But it's interesting now that there's now this other comparison between the two, between owls and aliens. It's pretty interesting.
There's actually another really famous case where, and I think it was part of Project Blue Book, where the guys that were investigating it, they determined that an alien sighting was actually a barn owl because of the area and where where the owl came down, and he was actually able to recreate that. Now, whether that was actually what really happened or they were just using that as their excuse is another thing. But
well, it's something. It could be a possibility, but does it apply towards every scenario?
Towards everything?
Probably not. Because how often do owls perch on windows?
Yeah.
Owls don't perch on windows. That's not their thing. Owls perch up in fucking trees and shit.
Exactly.
They're just not all going to sit on a windowsill. That's not how. That's not the MO of an owl. They're ambush predators. That's their thing. Not to say that there hasn't been the occasional retard owl that has, but to say that every single incident can be wrapped up to, oh, well, you just saw an owl. That's weird. Owls, God, living out here, I've seen maybe 4 owls in my life, and I actually got to see one eating a rabbit, and God, that was ridiculous.
Oh, jeez.
That was a noise that I never want to hear again.
I saw one really up close in Scotland when I was there a few years ago.
So you know what's cool is a couple years ago I took Yvette to do a falconry class. Because her and I like hawks and whatnot. It's kind of our thing. And the last thing we did was the instructor brought out this beautiful, just big, just great horned owl. Fucking big bird. Apparently owls, and I'm not encouraging this on anybody, but apparently owls are really like cuddly and they like cuddles and they like being scratched. Like neck scratches and whatnot. Apparently that's a thing. So, next time you think you see an alien gray peeking at you through the window, shine a light on it and see if maybe it's an owl and try to get it right on like the back of its neck, between like its ear and like the back of its neck. That's where birdies like being scratched.
Yeah.
That's like their itchy spot. You do that to any bird, they'll be your best friend forever. Just that one spot. Yeah,
you might get yourself an owl best friend, or you might wake up on a spaceship getting operated on.
Yeah, I mean, both are cool stories either way. You can either walk out having a spirit animal for life or an anal probe.
Yeah, and then you can join us on our podcast and be one of our guests.
Yeah, we would like to hear about it. So if there's the person out there who decides to befriend the owl that is peering at them at night through the window, we'd like to hear how that played out for you.
Yeah, let us know how it goes.
So I think we're going to wrap it up. So, again, folks, please like, comment, and subscribe. We're trying to get to 1,000 subs. If you are a long-time listener or even a new-time listener and you like some of the shit that we're doing, check out our content. We have our content spread out between a whole bunch of things right now.
Yeah. A lot of podcasts, a lot of videos.
Yes, and
cool stuff.
And I do want to get in touch with the one gentleman who reached out from the UK about posting some of his pictures on our social medias. Apparently, he lives really close to Hitler's bunker, and that'd be pretty neat. And a bunch of old mines. So we're going to work on getting. I need to reach out to the guy again, but I'm going to post some of those pictures. Some pretty neat stuff.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Next week. We're going to change gears a little bit and get into more of the urban-esque adventure type deal. We're going to be talking about Adventure Park. Or is it Action Park? Which one is it? Adventure Park, Action Park?
I think it's Action Park. I think Adventure Park is what they called the movie.
Oh, you know what? Adventure Park is something local. Action Park. Yeah, there we go. So we're going to be talking about Action Park. Our mutual friend Dan grew up very close to where Action Park used to reside, and boy, does he have hilarious stories about that place. So we're going to be talking that next week, and maybe throw in another fun story. Adrian and I are going to do a little bit of homework and see what else we can do to finish out the top of the show. So that's it. I am Steve.
I'm Adrian.
And
this has been the Tyde Podcast.
Yes, keep watching the skis.